Your bank just made $500 from your account last year, and you probably didn't even notice. That's right. While you're busy working hard for your money, banks are silently skimming profits from your accounts through hidden fees, pitiful interest rates, and psychological tricks. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how they're doing it and give you the exact playbook to take that money back. By the end of this video, you'll know how to keep an extra $500 plus in your pocket every single year. Money that would otherwise go straight to your bank's bottom line. The $500 drain, your annual banking tax. Did you know you're paying a hidden $500 tax every year? It's not going to the government, it's going straight to your bank. That's right, the average American is losing over $500 annually to their bank through various fees and charges that most people never even notice. This isn't some accidental oversight or unfortunate necessity of the banking system. It's a deliberate, calculated strategy designed to extract money from your account while flying completely under your radar. Banks have intentionally engineered their fee structures to be confusing, complicated, and incredibly difficult to track. They bury critical information about charges in dense paragraphs of fine print that requires a magnifying glass and legal degree to decipher. When was the last time you actually read those terms and conditions documents they send when they update their policies? Exactly. Banks are counting on that. Even when these fees do appear on your monthly statements, they're often disguised with vague descriptions or technical terminology that makes your eyes glaze over. A maintenance fee sounds like a necessary service charge. An account analysis fee seems like something important happening with your money. But in reality, these are just different names for the same thing, taking your hard-earned cash. The banking industry has turned fee collection into a massive profit center. In a single year, banks made over $15 billion from overdraft fees alone. That's billion with a B. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire GDP of many small countries, all collected in $35 increments when your account dipped below zero. And that's just one type of fee. What's particularly insidious is how the banking industry has systematically normalized these charges over time. 20 years ago, free checking accounts were the standard offering at most banks. Today, truly free accounts are increasingly rare, replaced by accounts with complex fee waiver requirements that most customers can't consistently meet. Meanwhile, banks have made these fees increasingly difficult to avoid. They've created minimum balance requirements that are out of reach for the average American. They've implemented tiered fee structures that penalize customers who don't maintain certain activity levels. They've even started charging fees for services that used to be completely free, like receiving paper statements or talking to a human teller. But here's what might surprise you even more. The charges you actually see on your statement are just the beginning. There are numerous ways banks are extracting money from your account that you've probably never even noticed. Hidden currency conversion fees when you travel internationally. Transaction sequencing that maximizes overdraft charges. Interest rate spreads that silently erode your savings while pumping up their profits. The most frustrating part? Most of these fees are completely avoidable if you know exactly what to look for and how to structure your banking relationships. By the end of this video, you'll know precisely how to identify every single hidden charge that's draining your account and exactly what to do to eliminate them. We're going to break down each major fee category, show you how much it's really costing you, and give you specific, actionable strategies to stop the bleeding. You'll discover which banks are charging the highest fees and which ones offer truly consumer-friendly alternatives. You'll learn the exact words to say to get fees waived when they do occur. And you'll get a complete system for monitoring your accounts to make sure no new fees ever slip through unnoticed. So just how much are maintenance fees and overdraft charges actually costing you each year? Let's start with one of the most common ways banks profit from customers, the monthly maintenance fee. This seemingly small charge might be the biggest banking leak in your financial boat. Monthly maintenance fees, the subscription you never signed up for. That small $13.95 monthly maintenance fee might not catch your attention on your bank statement, but multiply it across a year and you're looking at nearly $170 gone from your account. What's more shocking? Almost half of all checking accounts don't charge this fee at all, meaning millions of Americans are paying a completely unnecessary banking tax. Think about it. Maintenance fees are essentially a subscription service you never signed up for. While you carefully track your Netflix, Spotify, and gym memberships, this banking subscription flies under the radar month after month. Banks claim these fees cover the cost of maintaining your account, processing transactions, and providing customer service. But let's be honest, in today's digital age, most of these services are automated and cost banks very little to provide. What's particularly concerning is how these fees have been steadily climbing. Over the past 5 years, the average monthly maintenance fee has increased by 5%, from $13.29 to $13.95. While this might seem like a modest increase, it's happening during a period when banks are offering record low interest rates on your savings. You're paying more for basic services while earning less on your deposits. The banking industry relies heavily on customer inertia. They know most people won't notice small fee increases or take action even if they do. Many banks change their fee structures with minimal notification, burying the changes in fine print or emails that most customers never read. They're betting you won't go through the hassle of switching banks over just $14 a month. The fee landscape varies dramatically between institutions. Some premium accounts charge as much as $25 monthly, while others might only charge $4 to $5. The justification? Extra features you probably never use. The reality is that banks set these fees based on what they think their customer base will tolerate, not based on actual costs. These maintenance fees hit lower-income customers particularly hard. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, maintaining the minimum balance required to waive these fees, often thousands of dollars, is nearly impossible. This creates a financial catch-22. Those with less money end up paying more to keep their accounts open, while wealthier customers avoid the fees entirely by keeping large balances. It's essentially a tax on being poor. Here's the good news you probably didn't know. Currently, more than 45% of non-interest-bearing checking accounts are completely free. They don't charge monthly service fees or require minimum balances. While this represents a slight decrease from 46% in 2022, it still means that nearly half of all checking accounts don't charge maintenance fees at all. So why are millions of Americans still paying for something they could get for free? Most simply don't realize they have options. Banks certainly aren't advertising the fact that their competitors offer no-fee accounts. And many customers assume all banks charge similar fees, so switching wouldn't help. The fee structures at most banks are deliberately complex, making it difficult to understand exactly what you're paying for and why. Some banks waive fees if you maintain a minimum daily balance, while others require a minimum average monthly balance. Two very different requirements. Some waive fees if you set up direct deposit, use your debit card a certain number of times per month, or maintain accounts with multiple products at the same institution. Banks have turned maintenance fees into a goldmine precisely because they're betting on your inattention. A $13.95 monthly charge doesn't trigger the same alarm bells as a $167.40 annual fee would, even though they're identical amounts. By breaking it into smaller monthly charges, banks make these fees seem insignificant, even as they drain hundreds from your account year after year. The overdraft trap, banking on your mistakes. If you think maintenance fees are sneaky, wait until you see how banks turn your financial slip-ups into their gold mine. Those seemingly insignificant moments when your account dips below zero have created a $15 billion industry built entirely on your mistakes. What's truly shocking is just how high these charges can climb, with some banks charging up to $38 for a single overdraft transaction. That's not just expensive, it's potentially devastating to your finances. Here's how the overdraft trap works. When you make a purchase that exceeds your available balance, instead of declining the transaction, your bank generously covers the difference, then hits you with that hefty fee. But what they don't advertise is how they've engineered this system to maximize their profits at your expense. Let's put this in perspective. Imagine you're running low on funds, but decide to grab that $4 morning coffee anyway. If you accidentally overdraw your account, you're not just paying for coffee, you're potentially paying a $35 fee on top. That's an effective interest rate of 875% on your small purchase. Suddenly, that coffee costs you $39, making it perhaps the most expensive cup you've ever had. What makes this system particularly predatory is how banks process your transactions. Many institutions deliberately clear larger transactions first, even if they occurred after smaller purchases in your day. This isn't random, it's strategic. By processing the big payment first, they can potentially trigger multiple overdraft fees from several smaller transactions that might have otherwise cleared if processed in chronological order. For example, imagine you have $100 in your account. You make 5 small purchases of $15 each throughout the day, then a larger $50 purchase. If your bank processes the $50 transaction first, you'll have $50 left, not enough to cover all your smaller purchases. Instead of one overdraft fee, you could face 4 separate charges, potentially totaling over $140 in fees for going just $10 over your balance. And banks don't stop at just one fee per day. Some institutions will charge you up to 4 separate overdraft fees in a single day. At $38 per incident, that's a potential $152 in fees in just 24 hours. All because your timing or calculations were slightly off. The impact of these fees isn't distributed equally either. Younger Americans and those living paycheck to paycheck bear the brunt of this predatory system. When you're carefully balancing income against expenses with little margin for error, a single overdraft fee can trigger a cascade of financial problems, including more overdrafts, late payments on other bills, and spiraling debt. The good news is that consumer pressure is finally forcing some changes in the industry. Some financial institutions have begun eliminating overdraft fees entirely. Alliant Credit Union and Ally Bank have taken the lead by offering accounts with no overdraft fees whatsoever, challenging the traditional banking model. Even more encouraging, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has proposed new regulations that would significantly reduce overdraft fees across the industry. If passed, these changes will take effect in October 2025, potentially saving Americans billions of dollars annually. While waiting for these changes, you do have options. Many banks offer overdraft protection services that can help you avoid these fees, but read the fine print carefully. Some protection plans simply link your checking account to a savings account or credit card, transferring funds when needed. This can be helpful, but may still incur a smaller transfer fee. Other protection plans might actually be overdraft coverage programs that still charge significant fees, but market them differently. ATM fees, paying to access your own money. Ever wonder why accessing your own cash feels like you're being robbed? Let's talk about the silent money drain happening at ATMs everywhere. You've worked hard for your paycheck, deposited it at your bank, and now you're paying them again just to get it back in cash. This bizarre arrangement has created one of banking's most profitable revenue streams. When you use an out-of-network ATM, you're actually getting hit with 2 separate charges. First, there's your own bank's fee for daring to use another bank's machine. Then there's the ATM operator's surcharge, the fee the ATM owner tacks on just because they can. Together, these fees have reached an all-time high of $4.73 per transaction, the highest ever recorded in banking history. What's even crazier is how much these fees vary depending on where you live. If you're in Atlanta, you're facing the steepest ATM fees in the nation at an eye-watering $5.33 per transaction. Phoenix residents aren't far behind, paying around $5.24, while Detroit users shell out about $5.21 just to access their own money. These geographic differences aren't random. They often correlate with areas where banking competition is limited. Think about what this means for regular ATM users. If you withdraw cash twice a week from out-of-network ATMs, you could easily be spending over $250 annually just for the privilege of touching your own money. That's a vacation, a new smartphone, or several months of utility bills, all going straight to banks instead of staying in your pocket. What makes ATM fees particularly problematic is how they function as a regressive tax on those with fewer banking options. If you live in a neighborhood with limited access to your bank's ATMs, you're essentially being penalized for your geography. This disproportionately impacts people in rural communities and certain urban neighborhoods where major banks have fewer branches or ATMs. The banking industry clearly knows these fees are a goldmine. According to research, 62% of banks surveyed charge their customers for using out-of-network ATMs. That's nearly 2/3 of banks implementing these fees, showing just how standard this practice has become across the industry. The average fee just from your own bank for using another ATM is around $2.50, but this can vary significantly depending on your specific bank and the type of account you have. Some premium accounts might waive these fees, while basic accounts often charge the highest rates. Another way the system tends to penalize those with less money. What's particularly frustrating about ATM fees is that they're charged for an automated service that costs banks very little to provide. The maintenance and operation of ATMs is relatively inexpensive compared to staffing physical branches, yet banks charge premium prices for their use. It's a perfect example of pricing based on convenience rather than actual cost. Many customers don't realize they're paying these fees until they check their monthly statements, if they check them at all. The fees are often deducted at the time of the transaction, making them less noticeable than other banking charges. By the time you realize how much you've paid in ATM fees, it's already too late to do anything about them. The good news is that banks are facing increasing pressure to be more transparent about these fees. Many now offer mobile apps that help customers locate fee-free ATMs within their network. Some accounts also waive a certain number of out-of-network ATM fees each month as a perk for maintaining specific account behaviors or balances. Even better, some banks have started offering ATM fee reimbursements, essentially refunding customers for fees charged when using out-of-network machines. This can be a game changer for those who frequently need cash in areas where their bank doesn't have a strong presence. The minimum balance mind game. ATM fee reimbursements might sound like a win, but banks have another trick that's bleeding your finances dry. While you're celebrating those refunded ATM charges, your bank is quietly forcing you to keep thousands of dollars parked in your account earning virtually nothing, just to avoid a simple monthly fee. It's the minimum balance trap, and it's costing you far more than any ATM fee ever could. Let's cut through the banking jargon. Minimum balance requirements are exactly what they sound like. The amount of money banks require you to keep in your account at all times to avoid monthly maintenance fees. Banks claim these requirements help cover account servicing costs, but the reality is much more insidious. Here's the shocking truth. The average minimum balance needed to waive those pesky monthly fees is over $24,000. That's right. Banks expect you to keep enough money to buy a decent car just sitting idle in your checking account. For most Americans living paycheck to paycheck, maintaining this kind of balance is simply impossible. What makes this particularly painful is the opportunity cost. While your $24,000 sits in a checking account earning a pathetic 0.05% interest rate, if you're lucky, that same money invested elsewhere could be generating significant returns. Even a conservative investment might yield 5 to 7% annually. That's potentially thousands of dollars in lost growth every single year. Meanwhile, banks aren't just letting your money collect dust. They're using your idle cash to fund loans to other customers at interest rates that can exceed 20%. Talk about a sweet deal. For them, they're essentially borrowing your money for free and lending it out at premium rates, pocketing the entire difference as profit. This system creates a perverse reality where those with the least money pay the most in fees. If you can't maintain that $24,000 minimum, you're hit with monthly charges that further deplete your balance. It's a financial catch-22 that keeps people trapped in a cycle of fees and diminishing balances. The psychological impact shouldn't be underestimated either. Many customers experience genuine anxiety constantly monitoring their account balances, especially near the end of the month. That nagging worry about dropping below the minimum threshold adds a mental tax to an already stressful financial situation. For people living paycheck to paycheck, this creates yet another layer of financial stress. Let's put this in perspective. Maintaining $24,000 in a checking account earning 0.05% APY generates about $12 in annual interest. That same amount invested at a modest 5% would earn $1,200. The difference, $188, is the real hidden fee you're paying, far exceeding the advertised monthly maintenance charge. But here's the good news. Not all banks play this game. The minimum balance requirements vary dramatically across financial institutions. While some major banks demand those sky-high balances, others require as little as $100 to waive monthly fees. Even better, a growing number of banks have eliminated minimum balance requirements entirely. This shift is particularly noticeable in the online banking sector, where competitive pressure and lower overhead costs have led to more consumer-friendly policies. In fact, over 37% of checking accounts now have absolutely no monthly maintenance fees, regardless of your balance. These free checking options are becoming increasingly available, especially among digital banks. What's particularly interesting is the contrast between interest-bearing and non-interest checking accounts. The average minimum balance required to waive fees for interest checking accounts is approximately $8,684, while non-interest accounts require only $469 on average. This massive difference, the interest rate gap, how banks profit from your savings. That interest rate difference isn't just a small detail in your banking relationship. It's actually the core of how banks generate billions in profit each year. While your bank touts that interest-bearing checking account, the reality is far less impressive than the name suggests. Let's talk about the biggest magic trick in banking. You know that checking account proudly labeled as high interest. It's likely paying you a measly 0.05% interest rate. But flip the relationship when you need to borrow money, and suddenly your bank transforms into a profit machine, charging an average of 20% or more on credit cards. That's a staggering 400x difference between what they pay you and what they charge you. This massive 19.95% profit margin isn't accidental. It's the banking industry's most lucrative wealth extraction system. Think about it this way. For every $1,000 you keep in your savings account for a year, your bank might pay you just 50 cents in interest. Meanwhile, they're simultaneously charging another customer $200 to borrow that exact same money. Pretty sweet deal for them, right? What makes this even more frustrating is how banks respond to Federal Reserve rate changes. When the Fed raises interest rates, banks waste no time increasing what they charge borrowers. Credit card rates jump almost immediately, mortgage rates climb, and personal loan costs increase. But what about the interest on your savings? That barely budges. Banks have been notoriously slow to raise savings account interest rates while being lightning quick to increase loan rates. This widening gap is no accident. It's a deliberate strategy that maximizes their profits at your expense. Each time this spread increases, more money flows from average consumers directly to bank shareholders and executives. The numbers get even more interesting when you look at credit card processing. The average credit card processing fee is approximately 0.74% per transaction, which is significantly lower than the 20% interest banks charge on carried balances. This means banks aren't just covering their transaction costs. They're creating a massive profit engine on the backs of customers who carry balances. What's particularly clever about this system is how it creates a wealth transfer mechanism that most people never notice. Your money sits nearly idle in a checking account earning practically nothing, while the bank leverages those same deposits to issue high-interest loans and credit cards. It's like letting someone borrow your car for free, only to have them turn around and rent it to someone else for $200 a day, while you get a single quarter at the end of the week. This interest rate gap affects millions of Americans, with the impact falling hardest on those who can least afford it. People with lower incomes are more likely to carry credit card balances while having less in savings, creating the perfect storm where they're hit from both sides, earning almost nothing on savings while paying maximum interest on debt. But here's the good news. You don't have to accept this one-sided relationship anymore. While traditional banks continue this practice, a revolution has been happening in the financial sector. High-yield savings accounts now offer interest rates of 5% or more. That's 100 times higher than what traditional banks provide on standard savings accounts. These accounts let you earn significant interest on your money while maintaining the liquidity you need for everyday life. Switching to a high-yield savings account could mean the difference between earning $5 annually on a $10,000 deposit versus $500 or more. That's real money that should be in your pocket, not padding a bank's profit margin. The paper statement fee, charging you for your own records. While you're focused on maximizing interest rates, banks have quietly found another way to drain your account, charging you for information about your own money. That's right, those paper statements you've been getting for years, they're now coming with a price tag of around $3 per month. What was once considered a basic banking service is now a revenue stream generating $36 annually per customer. Remember when banks used to provide paper statements as a standard service? Well, those days are long gone. Now they've turned your desire to keep physical records of your transactions into yet another profit opportunity. It's a brilliant business move when you think about it. Banks are actually charging you to tell you what's happening with your own money. What's particularly clever about this fee is how banks present it. They don't market it as a new way to boost their bottom line. Instead, they frame it as an environmental initiative. Go paperless. Save the trees. The messaging suggests they're doing the planet a favor, while conveniently glossing over the fact that this green initiative is padding their profits quite nicely. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has specifically called out this practice, noting that these environmentally friendly claims often mask the true profit motive. Here's the kicker. When banks switch to electronic statements, they actually save substantial amounts on printing and mailing costs. The expense of paper, ink, envelopes, and postage all disappears. Yet instead of passing these savings on to you, they've created a system where you pay extra to maintain the service you've always had. Talk about a win-win situation for them. This fee might not seem like much at first glance. What's $3 a month, right? But multiply that across a major bank's customer base. If a bank has 10 million customers, and even just 30% of them pay for paper statements, that's 3 million people paying $36 annually, generating $108 million in pure profit for services that used to be free. The paper statement fee hits older customers particularly hard. Many seniors prefer physical records and may not be comfortable navigating digital banking platforms. A significant percentage of bank customers still receive paper statements despite these fees, with surveys indicating that they value having tangible records of their finances. For someone on a fixed income, that $36 annual charge represents yet another unnecessary drain on limited resources. Even if you want to escape these fees, banks don't make it easy. The process to opt out of paper statements is often deliberately complicated. You might need to navigate through multiple screens in an online portal, call customer service and wait on hold, or visit a branch in person. These hurdles aren't accidental. They're designed to discourage you from making the switch, ensuring that fee revenue keeps flowing. The truly frustrating part is that you're paying for information that is fundamentally yours. Your transaction history, your account balance, your banking activity. These belong to you, not the bank. Yet somehow, they've normalized the idea that you should pay to access your own financial data in the format you prefer. Want to avoid these fees without giving up your paper trail? There are several solutions. First, check if your bank offers fee waivers based on account types, balance minimums, or age. Many banks will drop the paper statement fee for premium accounts or for customers over 65. Another option is to simply opt for electronic statements and print them yourself at home. Yes, you'll use some paper and ink, but it will cost far less than $36 per year. Inactivity and early account closure fees, penalized coming and going. Just when you thought banks couldn't get more creative with fees, they've mastered the art of charging you coming and going. Ever wondered what happens to those accounts you opened but rarely use? Your money might be disappearing $20 at a time, and the bank has set up a financial barrier to prevent your escape. Let's talk about inactivity fees, the banking industry's way of punishing you for not touching your own money. These charges can hit your account at up to $20 monthly if you haven't made any transactions for 6 months or more. Think about that for a second. Your bank is literally charging you for not spending your money. It's like paying rent on cash you already own. But the banking fee trap doesn't end there. When you eventually discover these charges and try to close your account, surprise, there's another fee waiting for you. Early account closure fees typically cost around $25 and kick in if you shut down your account within 90 to 180 days of opening it. It's the financial equivalent of a hotel charging you both for not using the room and then again when you try to check out early. These two fees create the perfect customer trap. First, your dormant account gets drained by inactivity fees. Then, when you notice and try to escape, you're hit with an exit penalty. For someone with a low balance, this double whammy can be devastating. Imagine having $100 sitting in an old checking account. After 5 months of $20 inactivity fees, you're down to $0, and you never made a single transaction. What makes this situation worse is the lack of transparency. According to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, banks typically don't prominently disclose these charges when you're signing up. They're buried in the fine print of those 20-page agreements no one has time to read. The CFPB has highlighted how banks generate significant revenue from these fees while keeping customers largely unaware they even exist. The inactivity fee is particularly sneaky because many people open multiple accounts for different purposes, perhaps an emergency fund or saving for a specific goal, and intentionally leave them untouched. The bank rewards this responsible behavior by silently draining your savings month by month. Let's do the math. If your forgotten account gets hit with a $20 monthly inactivity fee, that's $240 disappearing from your balance each year. For accounts with smaller balances, these fees can completely wipe out your savings within months. And remember, this isn't money you're spending on goods or services. It's simply vanishing because you didn't log in or make transactions frequently enough. The good news is that not all banks operate this way. Some financial institutions have recognized that these practices are unfair and eliminated them entirely. Capital One 360 and Ally Bank, for example, don't charge either inactivity fees or early account closure fees. These banks understand that your money should remain your money, whether you're actively using it or not. So how can you protect yourself from these sneaky charges? First, make a calendar reminder to check all your accounts regularly. Even just logging in or transferring a small amount between accounts is usually enough activity to avoid inactivity fees. Second, if you're opening a new account, specifically ask about both inactivity and early closure policies before signing up. Don't rely on the bank to volunteer this information. Another effective strategy is setting up recurring small transfers. Even moving $1 between accounts monthly can be enough to keep them active in the bank's eyes. If you have direct deposit from your employer, setting this up for accounts you want to maintain can also help you avoid inactivity fees while potentially qualifying you for other benefits. The debit card profit engine. Those small transfers might save you from inactivity fees, but there's another way banks are silently skimming from your finances, right at the checkout counter. That quick swipe or tap of your debit card triggers a hidden transaction that puts money in your bank's pocket, not yours. And here's the kicker. Americans make over 111 billion card transactions annually, with each one padding bank profits. Every time you use your debit card to buy groceries, gas, or that morning coffee, your bank is collecting what's called an interchange fee from the merchant. According to Federal Reserve data, banks pocket an average of 0.74% or 34 cents per transaction. While that might not sound like much, multiply it across billions of transactions happening daily, and you're looking at a massive revenue stream that most customers never even know exists. Think about your own spending habits. Let's say you make just 10 debit card purchases weekly. That's 520 transactions per year. At 34 cents per swipe, your bank collects about $177 annually just from your everyday spending. Now imagine this happening with millions of customers, and you'll see why banks are so eager to get debit cards into as many hands as possible. What makes this system even more profitable for banks is how they've structured the types of transactions. When you swipe your card, you have two options: PIN debit or signature debit. PIN transactions, where you enter your code, typically have lower percentage fees but higher fixed fees. Signature transactions, processed through credit card networks like Visa or MasterCard, generally have higher interchange fees overall. Either way, your bank gets paid. Here's where things get really interesting. In 2011, the government tried to rein in these fees with the Durbin Amendment, which capped interchange fees for large banks at 0.05% plus 21 cents per transaction. But there was a massive loophole. Smaller banks were exempted from these caps. This created a two-tier system where exempt banks charge an average of 1.19% or 52 cents per transaction, while covered banks can only charge about 0.48% or 23 cents. Does your bank offer debit card rewards? Those points, cash back, or other perks aren't just generous gifts, they're calculated business decisions. Banks know they'll collect more in interchange fees than they'll ever pay out in rewards. It's a brilliant strategy. They offer you seemingly valuable rewards that cost them pennies while collecting much more in fees from merchants, which ultimately get passed back to you through higher prices. This is why free checking accounts with rewards programs have become more common. They're not actually free. Banks have simply shifted their revenue model from directly charging you maintenance fees to indirectly collecting money through your everyday spending habits. So what can you do about this? First, understand which category your bank falls into. If you bank with a smaller institution, they're likely collecting higher interchange fees. Second, if your debit card offers rewards, Make sure you're maximizing them, getting at least some value back from this system. Look for cards that offer cash back on purchases rather than points, which often have more transparent value. Third, consider using a credit card for purchases instead of debit, but only if you pay off the balance in full each month. Credit card rewards are typically more generous because credit card interchange fees are even higher than debit cards. Psychological banking tactics, the reward. Program illusion. Credit card rewards programs seem generous on the surface, but they hide a sophisticated psychological game where you're rarely the true winner. Behind those shiny points and cashback offers lies a carefully engineered system designed to change your spending behavior in ways that ultimately benefit the bank more than you. When your credit card offers free rewards, they're tapping into what behavioral economists call the power of zero, a powerful psychological trigger that makes us irrationally attracted to anything labeled as free. This tactic is remarkably effective because our brains respond more positively to something costing zero than to something with even a minimal cost. Banks know this and strategically design free checking accounts and no-cost rewards programs to hook you emotionally while embedding their real costs elsewhere. Think about how excited you get when your credit card offers 5% cashback on certain purchases. That excitement is by design. The bank has anchored you to that high percentage, making you focus on the reward rather than questioning whether you needed to make that purchase in the first place. This anchoring effect happens when banks present a higher initial price for services, then offer a promotional rate that seems like an incredible deal by comparison. You can avoid the $13.95 monthly fee by maintaining a $1,500 balance. Sound familiar? That's anchoring at work. The bank wants you focused on avoiding that fee rather than questioning why there's a fee at all or why you need to keep $1,500 sitting in a near-zero interest account. Premium and exclusive reward tiers operate on similar psychology. Notice how banks offer platinum, sapphire, or elite versions of their cards. These premium labels trigger our desire for status and exclusivity. When a bank charges slightly more for certain services with fancy names, we automatically perceive them as higher quality, even when they're functionally similar to standard options. This perception of exclusivity makes customers feel special and willing to pay more or maintain higher balances. The relationship with your personal banker also plays a crucial role in your financial decisions. Banks heavily invest in what experts call human differentiation. The understanding that customers often make decisions based on their relationships with bank representatives rather than on the products themselves. That's why your local branch manager knows your name, asks about your kids, and sends birthday cards. These personal connections create emotional bonds that make it psychologically harder to switch banks, even when another institution offers objectively better terms. Banking reward programs take this psychological manipulation even further by applying principles of gamification. Those progress bars showing how close you are to your next reward tier, they trigger the same dopamine rush as leveling up in a video game. Studies show that emotional arousal significantly influences our financial decision-making, often overriding rational analysis. When banks create engaging, emotionally resonant experiences around their rewards programs, they're influencing your choices on a neurological level. Even more concerning is how banks use your own data against you. Modern financial institutions analyze your transaction history to create hyper-personalized offers that seem tailored just for you. Research shows 61% of consumers will spend more with companies that provide personalized experiences. Banks leverage this by offering rewards in categories where you already spend, making you feel understood while subtly encouraging you to spend even more in those areas. So how do you protect yourself from these psychological tactics? First, always evaluate banking products based on cold, hard numbers rather than emotional appeals. Calculate exactly how much a rewards program would pay you based on your actual spending patterns. Then compare that to any associated fees or interest costs. Second, be wary of status-based marketing that makes you feel special or exclusive. Ask yourself, would I choose this account if it didn't have a fancy name or special card design? Finally, consider establishing banking relationships with multiple institutions to avoid the emotional attachment that comes from having all your finances in one place. The online banking revolution. Why digital banks pay you more. That magical difference in your bank account? It isn't magic at all. While traditional banks are still charging monthly fees that eat away at your hard-earned money, digital banks have quietly revolutionized the industry with a simple approach, actually giving you more of your own money back. Let me paint the picture. 70.7% of online checking accounts charge zero monthly maintenance fees. Traditional brick-and-mortar banks, just 32.4%. That's a staggering difference that directly impacts your bottom line. But this isn't just about avoiding a monthly charge. It's about a fundamental shift in how banking can and should work. The secret behind online banks' generosity isn't complicated. It's pure economics. Without physical branches on every corner, online banks dodge the massive overhead costs that traditional banks carry. No rent for thousands of locations, no utilities for sprawling buildings, and significantly fewer staff members on payroll. Those savings, instead of padding shareholder pockets, they're passed directly to you through better terms and lower fees. But the differences don't stop at monthly maintenance fees. The interest rate gap between traditional and online banks is downright shocking. While traditional banks are still offering rock-bottom rates around 0.05% on interest-bearing checking accounts, some online banks are literally multiplying that by 100 times or more. That means $10,000 sitting in your account could earn you $500 plus annually instead of a measly $5. This revolution wasn't just good for online bank customers. It's forced traditional banks to improve their game too. Competition from digital players has created upward pressure that's benefiting everyone. That's why we're seeing a slight increase in free checking availability across the board. A recent survey showed that 45% of non-interest-bearing checking accounts are now free, and 87% can become free if you meet direct deposit requirements. That's competition working in your favor. The digital banking trend isn't slowing down either. The market is projected to reach nearly $14 billion by 2026, growing at over 11% annually. COVID-19 accelerated this shift as people discovered they could manage their finances perfectly well without stepping foot in a branch. Customer satisfaction rates tell the story. Digital banks consistently outrank traditional institutions, especially among younger consumers who prioritize convenience and value over legacy banking relationships. But let's be real about the trade-offs. Traditional banks still offer services that some online banks can't match. Need to deposit cash regularly? That's trickier with an online-only bank. Want to speak face-to-face with a banker about complex financial decisions? You might miss that personal touch. Some people still value the security feeling of walking into a physical branch where they know the staff by name. The ultimate banking strategy isn't choosing sides in this financial revolution. It's creating your own personalized banking ecosystem that maximizes benefits while minimizing costs. Many financial experts now recommend a hybrid approach. Maintain a free checking account with a local credit union or community bank for occasional in-person services, while keeping your main savings in a high-yield online account where it can actually grow. Consider opening an account with both types of institutions. Use your traditional bank for services that require physical presence, depositing cash, accessing safe deposit boxes, or getting cashier's checks. Then keep the bulk of your money in an online bank earning real interest. Set up automatic transfers between accounts to avoid inactivity fees, and use your online bank's typically larger ATM network for cash withdrawals. This strategy lets you enjoy the best of both worlds: the convenience and high interest rates of digital banking, plus the specialized services of traditional institutions when you need them. It's not about loyalty to one bank. Small banks versus it's about creating a system that works for your money really charging rather than against it. Beyond the digital versus traditional banking debate we've been exploring, there's another financial battlefield most people completely overlook. While you're busy optimizing your online banking strategy, the size of your bank might be silently draining hundreds from your account every year. Let's get real about small local banks versus the banking giants. The numbers tell a surprising story that might make you rethink your banking relationship. Small community banks are actually offering significantly more free checking accounts than their larger competitors. Nearly 44.3% of checking accounts at small banks have absolutely no monthly maintenance fees, while big banks only offer this perk on 31.33% of their accounts. That's a massive difference that could immediately save you money. But the savings don't stop there. When small banks do charge monthly maintenance fees, they're typically much more reasonable. The average monthly fee at small banks is just $10.95, compared to the hefty $16.35 you'll pay at larger institutions. That's over $5 less each month, adding up to annual savings of more than $60 just on maintenance fees alone. ATM fees tell a similar story. If you're tired of getting charged just to access your own money, small banks typically charge less for out-of-network ATM usage. The combined fee, including both your bank's fee and the ATM operator's fee, averages $3.82 at small banks, but jumps to $4.88 at big banks. For someone who uses ATMs weekly, that difference adds up fast. Here's where things get interesting, though. Small banks aren't winning in every category. Surprisingly, they actually charge higher overdraft fees than the banking giants. The average overdraft at a small community bank will cost you $31.86, slightly more than the $30.84 you'd pay at a larger institution. It's not a huge difference, but it's definitely something to consider if you occasionally dip below zero. What's driving these differences? It comes down to fundamentally different business models. Small banks build their reputation on personal relationships and community engagement. They often know their customers by name and take pride in providing personalized service. This relationship-focused approach often translates to more favorable fee structures on everyday banking services. Meanwhile, large banks operate on economies of scale. They have massive customer bases, sophisticated technology systems, and nationwide, or even global, reach. They can afford to offer certain perks that smaller institutions can't match, like extensive branch networks and advanced mobile banking features. But they also tend to nickel-and-dime customers more aggressively with various fees to satisfy shareholders. The banking landscape is evolving rapidly, though. Small banks are increasingly merging or being acquired by larger institutions, reducing local banking options in many communities. At the same time, the rise of online banking has forced all banks, both small and large, to reevaluate their fee structures and customer service approaches to remain competitive. So how do you determine which type of bank is best for your wallet? The answer isn't one size fits all. It depends entirely on your specific banking habits. If you never overdraft and value free checking with a personal touch, a small community bank will likely save you significant money. Their lower maintenance fees and ATM charges could easily put hundreds back in your pocket annually. On the other hand, if you occasionally overdraft or need specialized services only available at larger institutions, a big bank might be more cost-effective despite the higher monthly fees. Many large banks also offer more robust rewards programs that could offset their higher fee structure if you use their services strategically. The smart approach is to audit your own banking behavior. Look through 3 to 6 months of statements and identify exactly which fees you're currently paying. Then research specific banks, both small and large, to find one whose fee structure aligns with your actual habits. Focus on the fees that would affect you most based on how you use your accounts. The banking fee waiver system. Rules banks don't want you to know. You've been reviewing your statements and cutting back on fees, but what if I told you there's a secret forgiveness button that banks can press to make charges disappear? Most financial institutions have hidden fee waiver policies they never advertise, and they're counting on you not knowing about them. When you spot that dreaded overdraft or maintenance fee on your statement, your first instinct might be to accept it as inevitable. But here's what the banks don't want you to know. Up to 90% of customers who call to complain about fees get them waived, according to industry insiders. That's right, 9 out of 10 people who pick up the phone walk away with money back in their pocket. Most banks have established once-a-year fee forgiveness programs specifically for customers in good standing. These programs aren't mentioned in glossy brochures or website FAQs. They're only activated when you directly ask about them. It's like a secret menu item that only the initiated know to order. Banks aren't offering these waivers out of generosity. They're using them strategically as customer retention tools. When you threaten to close your account and take your business elsewhere, suddenly that non-negotiable $35 overdraft fee becomes very negotiable. The math is simple. Waiving a single $35 fee is cheaper than losing a customer who might generate thousands in lifetime value through loans, credit cards, and other services. So how do you tap into this secret system? It starts with the right approach. When calling your bank, persistence and politeness are your most powerful weapons. Customer service representatives have significant discretion when it comes to fee waivers, and they're much more likely to use that power for customers who treat them with respect. Try this script. Hi, I just noticed this specific fee on my statement. I've been a customer for X years and have maintained a good relationship with the bank. I understand mistakes happen, but I'm hoping you might be able to waive this fee as a one-time courtesy. Do you have a forgiveness policy or a rewind program for customers in good standing? Notice the key elements: identifying the specific fee, establishing your value as a long-term customer, acknowledging that you're asking for a courtesy, not a right, and directly asking about forgiveness policies. This approach yields results because it gives the representative a justification for helping you. If the first representative refuses, don't give up. Politely thank them, end the call, and try again later. Different representatives often have different authority levels, and you might get someone more willing to help on your second try. If multiple attempts fail, ask to speak with a supervisor who typically has greater authority to approve waivers. For maximum effectiveness, time your calls strategically. Call during off-peak hours when representatives aren't rushed and can take more time with your request. Early mornings or late afternoons on weekdays often work best. Avoid Mondays and Fridays when call volumes are typically highest. Banks also have specific rewind programs that can reverse overdraft fees if you make a deposit that covers the overdrawn amount within a certain time frame, usually 24 hours. But again, many customers never learn about these programs because banks don't actively promote them. The most successful fee fighters aren't just reactive, they're proactive. Mark your calendar to audit your accounts quarterly, identifying any fees you've paid and calling to request waivers. This systematic approach can save you hundreds of dollars annually with minimal time investment. Here's your 3-step action plan for this week. First, review your last 6 months of statements and identify every fee you've paid. Second, call your bank with the script above and request waivers for those fees. Third, set up calendar reminders to check your statements monthly going forward, catching and disputing fees immediately when they appear. The junk fee revolution: how consumer pressure is changing banking. Those personal fee fighting tactics we discussed work great today, but something even bigger is happening behind the scenes. A full-scale revolution against what's now officially labeled junk fees. Banking is undergoing a massive transformation that could save you from having to make those awkward phone calls altogether by 2025. What started as a few frustrated customers has snowballed into a consumer movement so powerful that even the biggest banks in America are backing down. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, has taken up the fight as their personal mission, declaring war on what they've specifically labeled as junk fees. Those sneaky charges that seem to pop up everywhere in financial services. This isn't just talk, we're seeing real results already. Remember Bank of America's notorious $35 overdraft fee? That's been slashed to just $10 in direct response to this growing pressure. And they're not alone. Banks across the country are scrambling to reform their fee structures before regulators force their hand. What's really exciting is what's coming next. The CFPB has announced proposed regulations that would put the squeeze on overdraft fees nationwide, with changes expected to take effect in October 2025. This isn't some minor tweak. It's a fundamental shift in how banks will be allowed to profit from your financial slip-ups. The numbers are already showing promising trends. The average overdraft fee dropped by 11% last year alone, now sitting at $26.61. That's still way too high, but the direction is clear. These fees are on their way down and fast. Why is this happening now after decades of fee increases? 2 words: public pressure. Social media has turned individual frustrations into viral movements. Consumer advocacy groups have organized campaigns that expose these practices, turning what was once private banking frustration into public embarrassment for financial institutions. When hashtag #BankFeeRipoff starts trending, or a tearful TikTok about a $175 overdraft disaster goes viral, banks face something they fear more than lost revenue: reputational damage. This new transparency is forcing banks to compete on customer friendliness rather than just finding creative ways to extract fees. The CFPB is actively gathering information from everyday Americans about how these fees impact their lives. They're collecting stories from individuals and small business owners to build cases for new regulations. Your experiences with junk fees could literally help shape future banking laws. But here's what's really fascinating. Some banks aren't waiting for regulations to force their hand. They're completely eliminating overdraft fees voluntarily. Capital One, Ally Bank, and Alliant Credit Union have all scrapped these fees entirely. Others are creating grace periods, reducing fee amounts, or implementing balance alerts to help customers avoid charges altogether. So why aren't all banks doing this? The answer is simple but revealing. Those billions in fee revenue are incredibly addictive. Banks that have built their business models around fee income are struggling to envision a future without it. The banks eliminating fees are typically those with more diversified revenue streams, or those trying to attract younger, more fee-sensitive customers. This shifting landscape creates a perfect opportunity for you to leverage better terms with your bank. The next time you call about a fee, mention that you're aware many competitors are reducing or eliminating these charges. Ask directly, what is your bank's timeline for reducing overdraft fees in line with industry trends? This signals you're informed and considering your options. For maximum negotiating power, research specific banks that have better fee policies before making your call. Being able to name drop exact competitors and their policies puts pressure on your bank to match those terms or risk losing your business. You can also request to be enrolled in any pilot programs your bank might be testing. Many institutions roll out fee reductions to select customers first before making company-wide changes. Simply asking, do you have any programs to help customers avoid overdraft fees that I could be enrolled in? Might give you early access to better terms. The ultimate banking fee defense system, your 5-step action plan. While regulations and policy changes are making waves, you don't need to wait for banks to change their ways to start saving serious cash. What if I told you that most people could recover enough in bank fees annually to fund an entire month's groceries? The difference between people who pay hundreds in banking fees and those who pay almost nothing isn't luck, it's strategy. Let me walk you through the complete banking defense system that can save you hundreds every year. First, you need to know exactly what you're dealing with. Start by conducting a thorough banking audit. Pull your last 12 months of statements and identify every single fee you've paid. This might sound tedious, but the results are often shocking. Many people discover they're paying nearly $300 annually without realizing it. Create a simple spreadsheet categorizing each fee by type: maintenance fees, overdraft charges, ATM fees, and any other charges. This audit gives you a clear picture of where your money is leaking and which fees are hurting you most. Once you know what you're paying, it's time to shop for better banking relationships. Remember that 45% of non-interest-bearing checking accounts are completely free, meaning no monthly maintenance charges whatsoever. And online checking accounts are even more likely to be fee-free, with over 70% offering no monthly maintenance fees. Make a list of your banking habits, how often you use ATMs, whether you maintain high or low balances, and how frequently you receive direct deposits. Then match these habits to accounts specifically designed to waive fees for your usage patterns. The third step is implementing targeted strategies for each fee type. For maintenance fees, setting up direct deposit is often the simplest solution. 87% of accounts will waive monthly fees with regular direct deposits. To avoid ATM fees, use your bank's mobile app to locate in-network machines, or choose a bank that reimburses out-of-network fees. For overdraft protection, link your checking account to a savings account or line of credit as a safety net. These simple adjustments can eliminate the vast majority of common banking fees. Next, set up a proactive monitoring system to prevent future fees. Enable low balance alerts to notify you before you risk overdrafts. Schedule a quarterly fee audit on your calendar to review your statements and catch any new charges. Many banks provide mobile apps with features like transaction alerts and budgeting tools that help you track balances in real time. These digital tools make fee prevention almost automatic once properly configured. The final step is developing effective negotiation strategies for when fees do slip through. Most people don't realize that banks have fee forgiveness policies that customer service representatives can apply at their discretion. Prepare specific scripts for calling your bank when fees appear. Be polite but direct. I noticed an overdraft fee on my account. I've been a customer for X years with a good standing relationship. Can you tell me about your fee forgiveness policy? Using this approach has a surprisingly high success rate, because banks value long-term customers more than one-time fees. The timeline for implementing this system is straightforward. The initial audit takes about 1 hour. Researching and selecting new accounts might require 2 to 3 hours spread over a week. Setting up your new accounts and configuring alerts takes another hour or 2. Within just 1 month of focused effort, you can create a banking system that saves you money automatically year after year. Beyond fee avoidance, how to make banks pay you. That month of focused effort to eliminate banking fees is just the beginning of your financial power play. What if I told you the defensive strategy we've been building is actually just your warm-up act? The real banking game isn't about preventing losses. It's about putting banks in a position where they're actively competing to pay you. Banks are desperate for new customers, and they're willing to pay serious cash to get them. Capital One 360 Checking, for example, will hand you $200 just for opening a new account and setting up direct deposits, totaling $1,000 or more within your first 60 days. That's not pocket change. It's real money they're offering simply because they want your business. These sign-up bonuses aren't rare exceptions either. They're everywhere if you know where to look. By strategically opening new accounts throughout the year, always after carefully reading the requirements, you could easily pocket $1,000 or more annually just from welcome bonuses. Think about it. That's double what the average person loses to bank fees each year, completely flipping the financial relationship in your favor. But bonuses are just the beginning. The interest rate game is where long-term wealth really grows. While traditional banks are still offering insulting 0.05% interest rates on savings, online banks are fighting for your deposits with rates as high as 5% APY. Lending Club's high-yield savings account, for instance, offers competitive rates with no monthly fees and minimal balance requirements, just $100 to get started. Let's put this in perspective. $10,000 sitting in a traditional savings account at 0.05% earns you a measly $5 per year. That same money in a high-yield account at 5% generates $500 annually. That's not just a small improvement. It's 100 times more money staying in your pocket rather than the bank's coffers. Smart banking isn't just about where you keep your money. It's also about how you spend it. Banks like Discover have introduced cashback debit accounts that pay you 1% cashback on up to $3,000 in debit card purchases each month. That's up to $360 per year just for buying the things you already need. The strategic banking approach requires thinking beyond single accounts. Consider creating a personal banking ecosystem. Maintain a no-fee checking account at one bank for daily transactions. Link it to a high-yield savings account at another institution for your emergency fund, and use a rewards-heavy debit card for regular purchases. This multi-bank strategy maximizes the benefits while eliminating the costs. Some banks are even removing traditional pain points to attract valuable customers. Synchrony Bank, for example, refunds ATM fees from other banks' machines, eliminating one of the most frustrating expenses in banking. The banking revolution isn't just about avoiding fees. It's about recognizing your value as a customer. Banks are increasingly using AI-driven platforms to analyze customer data and provide personalized financial advice and product recommendations. These tools can help identify opportunities to grow your money that you might otherwise miss. Customer-centric banks that offer tailored communication and financial products designed to meet your specific needs are worth seeking out. These relationships often lead to exclusive offers and preferential treatment that can significantly enhance your financial well-being over time. Think of your banking relationship like any other business transaction. You're bringing value to the table, and you deserve compensation for it. Your deposits provide the capital banks need to make loans. Your transaction history gives them valuable data. Your loyalty represents future revenue streams. Once you recognize your worth in this equation, you'll never settle for simply avoiding fees again. That $500 in annual bank fees we've been talking about, it's not just a one-time loss. It compounds dramatically over your lifetime. By being proactive about managing your banking relationships, you could potentially save $15,000 over a 30-year period when you factor in compounding interest. That's college tuition money, a down payment on a home, or a significant boost to your retirement. The most concerning part? According to recent surveys, 70% of consumers don't even realize what fees they're paying. Banks count on this lack of awareness. They're banking on your inaction. The power to change this dynamic is entirely in your hands. Every fee you eliminate stays in your account, working for your future instead of padding bank profits. Don't wait for the banking industry to change on its own. They won't unless we demand it. Take one action today based on what you've learned. Your future self will thank